It's a great privilege to be here amongst the many things that I'm here to celebrate besides chemistry and chemical engineering, as already indicated. I'm one of you. I feel very privileged about that. I actually started my career here in Melbourne, and that weather coming in certainly reminded me of Melbourne winters and that little storm that came through. So I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be, as my adult children would say, amongst my peeps, amongst my people. So I look forward to the discussion, and I'll give you some remarks. It's always a joy for me to be in a room full of scientists and to celebrate the centenary of RACI and all the associations associated with chemistry and chemical engineering. I don't spend much of my time anymore in things research or things laboratory or things even operating plants, but I am truly still very much a chemical engineer in the way I approach all aspects of the roles that I get to play, including the roles that David mentioned. I remember, for people who may be more early in their careers, who might be in the room, but certainly maybe many of you, the excitement I felt in those early years when I fell in love with chemistry, and I fell in love with the power of the knowledge of what chemistry can do and what it does do to define so much of life, and the exhilaration one felt as one learned and one understood the power of how to actually master that. And when I studied chemistry and chemical engineering at the University of Queensland, I remember one of my goals in life was above everything, above financial fulfillment, security, above personal achievement. It was really this notion that you could solve problems, and certainly problem solving and the way of thinking that science and chemistry in particular brings has been with me through my entire journey. I call it my North Star. It's a guiding principle that you can see things in a certain way, maybe in a very nerd-like fashion. The periodic table does in fact define everything. It helps me be motivated, and I motivate others with it, certainly in our company, in our enterprise, which is full of people just like me. Dow's sometimes called the Chemical Engineers Chemistry Company, and I'm very proud of that. I chose chemistry because I really did believe it could, or maybe it chose me, it could give us the power to undertake transformation in any field. I think we are trained as chemists and chemical engineers to look at problems differently and break it down, if you like, problems into component parts, down to molecules, electrons, and even quantum states. And then by understanding these essential elements, if you like, these hidden processes that shape our environment, we can design solutions that transform the very fabric of our world. Just like when chemists Fritz Haber and Carl Bosch combined atmospheric nitrogen and hydrogen and gave us ammonia and urea and gave us fertilizer, which increased food production for the world. Or when a decade later, Alexander Fleming, working with the chemist Howard Florey, an Australian actually, really brought us penicillin and figured out how to purify it and bring it into hospitals. Discoveries like that have changed society, have changed life on this planet, have changed and transformed how we all relate to each other, literally saving billions of lives. I really believe, and certainly I've tried to fulfill it in my time at this storied chemical company called Dow, that more than ever we need innovation in the scientific sense, innovation in the business sense, because the challenges we face today are daunting and truly are defining society in this modern century. Just some statistics: by 2025, 1.8 billion people will live in regions where clean water is scarce. By 2030, 40% of the world's people will lack adequate housing. By 2040, global energy consumption, we predict, will nearly double, and unprecedented extreme weather events are likely to become the status quo rather than outliers and exceptions. And by 2050, as the global population tops 9 billion, demand for food will increase by 60%. We're getting a little bit of a precursor to some of these challenges right here in Australia, where climate change and its effects are degrading the environment. Essential natural resources are harder to get to, and frankly, some of the ecosystems that make Australia unique are being destroyed, like the Great Barrier Reef, and in fact causing extreme weather events that threaten people's lives. I said daunting challenges, yet I'm not fearful, nor am I depressed. I, in fact, am energized. I really do believe that as a result of the 2015 ratification of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and what it demonstrated, there is an increasing commitment and an awareness around the world as I get to travel and mix in the circles that decisions get made, whether they be in government circles, academia, and more than ever before, I'm proud to say, from business circles. In fact, these challenges that I just talked about, and many others I didn't and haven't, maybe we'll do in discussion, actually provide a roadmap for a complete new business model. One where solving some of the world's most intractable problems actually presents boundless business opportunities. And I really do believe because of multiple breakthroughs. New technologies are allowing us to experiment more rapidly, more boldly, come up with more discoveries than ever before. And truly, digitalization and its effects on the world is redefining how we process data and obtain new insights. I still believe that chemistry is at the core of the solutions the world needs the most, and that this science in particular enables other sciences, which means that all of you in particular have an incredible opportunity, and certainly in congresses like this one this week, to really discuss and rise and meet those challenges, and in doing so, usher in a new era of progress and prosperity, not just for this country, but for the world. And there's a time not too long ago when that sense of purpose actually might not have been found, certainly in business or in industry. In fact, I think one of the most promising developments I've seen in my career lifetime, in my generation, if you like, is it's not the progress of a new chemical, if you like, or a new polymer. It's not even the progress of discovery in the sciences, but it's the discovery that businesses can drive this process, that business can own the problem and own the solution. I think it's fair to say that when I first started in Dow, in the world of business, if one walked into a room and started talking about saving the world, you might have been encouraged to go find another profession or go find another role, whether it be in academia or government or NGOs. So even if one felt that ambition 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, one didn't articulate it. One would keep it very much to yourself. Why? Well, the obvious. Businesses, the bottom line, profit, cash flow, balance sheet, allocation of financial resources. We were all trained that that's the only thing that mattered to shareholders. That's where our work started and that's where our work ended. But these past 3 or 4 decades have seen a profound change. And it's still evolving, but we've passed the tipping point. It's a rapid change. It's moving, accelerating now, and it's moving in a positive direction, speaking with great optimism. Just look at those Sustainable Development Goals I referenced earlier. When the UN launched the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, it barely occurred to anyone, including the developers of those goals, to bring the private sector into the conversation. But when they launched these more recent goals in 2015, the private sector was right there as a key player to driving those 17 goals that the United Nations rolled out. Companies like ours were at the table. Initiatives like the UN Global Compact and Impact 2030 called on companies to do their part in the global effort to improve the world and solve these problems I talked about earlier. I think this is clear evidence of something that I've witnessed in my career, a remarkable evolution in the way companies think about their responsibility to society, and the role business can therefore play in solving problems and improving people's lives. For those of us at Dow, that effort is actually what drives us. It's actually become our business model. Sustainability is not an initiative. It's core to what our people wake up to think about every day and drive to find solutions. It's what really gets us out of bed every morning, no matter what time zone we wake up in, and we're in 162 countries, so that's a lot of time zones. We're asking questions like, what materials can we invent to help make housing more energy efficient, so that the wave of people, excuse me, entering the middle class across the planet does not mean skyrocketing carbon emissions? What new ways can we purify water so that everyone has access to it when traditional water sources fall short? How can we design and launch new polymers and new fibers like carbon fibers to make cars safer or transportation safer, lighter, and more fuel efficient so they do in fact use less fuel? After all, for every 5 kilos you take out of the weight of a car, 5 to 8 kilos less carbon dioxide gets emitted to the atmosphere. For us, developing this social consciousness, this sense of citizen and community, is not charity. As I said, it's central to our business purpose, our business strategy, and indeed to our bottom line. For one, we believe there will always be a market for meeting essential human needs. And we also know that today, to attract the best and the brightest, the talent out there that we all have to compete in this incredible world of ours, we need to help the youth of today fulfill their aspirations as they seek a better life for the generation that has become the following generation to the one that built the world that we're in. We didn't get it right, believe it or not. We built a great world, but we're running out of runway to continue it. This new youth are becoming our employees, and they feel that working for a good cause really can help make a difference. We've done studies on this. Those who believe that are 30% more productive and 4 times more likely to say that they have employee satisfaction in their workplace. I firmly believe that the companies of the 21st century will be the ones that attract that talent and invent solutions to solve these mounting global challenges. So you can see why more and more companies are seeing that by doing well, you can do good, and that by doing good, you can do well. And it's not a choice between the two. Today, I'm willing to make a bet. If you walk into any science-driven enterprise like Dow and start talking about how you want to make the world a better place, they're not going to suggest you go find a job elsewhere. They're going to say, show us your plan. Give us your best ideas. Tell us how we can do that. What sorts of initiatives can we undertake to make it part of our business model? And something else has happened, which I'm sure you're all very conscious of. Certainly, there's one of them in your pockets. The digital era has truly arrived. We now have machine insights. And machine insights working together with human insights, the advent of AI, helps us to get the data to solve complex problems. This is an exciting time for the era of innovation. Scientists here in Australia and working with scientists all over the world, in Asia and US and Europe and elsewhere, Africa, everywhere in the Americas, can quickly learn from one another and quickly cascade each other's discoveries with computers and machines basically amplifying our capabilities, taking each individual mind and exponentially increasing the capacity of looking at problems. We're opening up possibilities from experimentation to launch like never before. It's difficult not to overstate the importance of this shift. For example, at Dow, our scientists today can do over 2 million experiments a year to find the better solution using automation, robotics, data analytics, and big data moving into AI and software that supports us. So I think this is one reason why it's exciting to be a scientist, a chemist, a chemical engineer, if you like. Here's another. New technologies have made us better at inventing even more new technologies. If you take the futurist Ray Kurzweil, who's now the director of engineering at Google, he calls this the law of accelerating returns. It means basically that innovation drives innovation. Advances in transportation, communication, and as mentioned, information technologies have transformed our world, driving 2 very big trends. Firstly, and this is not all good news, we are increasingly globalized, meaning people and societies are increasingly interconnected. And of course, the other one, being increasingly digitized, meaning the machine insights are moving and cascading further into our lives. At Dow, our patent production is 8-fold higher than it was 10 years ago because of these trends. Many of these inventions are not just good for Dow, but they're good for the world, such as a paint that removes formaldehyde, toxic formaldehyde, from indoor air, such as innovative packaging technologies that take out waste in the food chain. As you know, we lose 40% of food production post-harvest. Our packaging technologies reduces that. And methods of desalination and cleaning of brackish water that enables us to put all the planet's waters to use. If individual companies like ours are seeing this sort of innovative power grow like that, more and more of these companies are committing to solving these challenges with these innovations. That could be really, for this century and this next couple of decades, at these intersections, the sciences with digitalization and increased connectivity, a golden era, a new golden era of innovation that should excite and stimulate those young minds and maybe some not so young minds to really join this profession and provide these solutions. I believe the private sector can do a great deal. As already indicated, now it has not only got a seat at the table, it's leading many of the conversations. It really can't, of course, do it alone. We need that other instrument of humanity, the one that we keep working on, government, to set smart regulatory and policy frameworks that enable this, that enable the innovation to flourish and not create the headwinds. Unfortunately, I don't believe we've seen enough of this mindset here in Australia. Australia's chief economist has noted that by international standards, Australian businesses are very slow to adopt new technologies, frankly in the middle of the pack versus advanced economies, rather than at the forefront. The World Economic Forum reports that Australia ranks 25th in the world when it comes to business capacity for innovation. We have seen that even when Australia excels in fields like chemistry, our businesses have often got trouble turning knowledge, raw knowledge, and commercializing it into products that could change the world, certainly on these shores. They tend to have to leave. And most concerning of all, Australia has seen a major slide in its competitiveness in teaching those same young people science and math. Last year, a study showed that since 2011, Australia has dropped from 12th to 17th for both Year 8 math and science. For Year 4, it dropped from 18th to 28th in math. The Year 4 science ranking did not budge. It was already at 25. Countries like Kazakhstan, Cyprus, and Slovenia have all leapt ahead. This is particularly troubling when you consider a study from Sydney's Macquarie University showing strong correlation between a country's math and sciences scores and its overall competitiveness. It does not matter if we have all these new tools at our disposal if we're failing at teaching and training people to use those tools. Fortunately, there is some progress. It's not all doom and gloom. Organizations like yours and others are doing excellent work to encourage STEM education. And the government's National Innovation and Science Agenda, which was launched in 2015 with $65 million in federal funding for STEM education, was an important step forward. But these steps are just that, steps. We need to double and redouble our efforts to make up this lost ground I described, because the most innovative countries in the world, they're not going to stand still and wait for us to catch up. In fact, in my experience, and in the book I wrote in 2011 called Make It in America, which got me an assignment or two with various presidents, in that book, I made an observation that what is happening is that countries are competing like companies when it comes to science, R&D, and launching new technologies. Nation states are figuring out how to corral their precious resources so they can innovate and invent and attract modern-day manufacturing. When you attract manufacturing, you build research capability. When you build research capability, you put universities around it to feed that capability and scale up. Governments are doing this knowing that this is the only way they can compete in this modern century. They're continuing to invest in scientific research, programs to train their young people, and initiatives to attract investment from science-driven businesses like ours. Take Israel. The Israeli government has long supported innovation, funding startup incubators, working closely with universities to help commercialize new technologies, and crafting policies friendly to venture capital investors. They've created what some call an innovation paradise, fueling growth that allows their government to continually reinvest in this ecosystem. Today, Israel is a global leader in R&D investment as a percentage of GDP. South Korea also is doubling down on innovation as a growth strategy. Bloomberg already rates South Korea as having the world's most innovative economy. Its government announced just last month that it will increase spending on science and technology R&D by 26% in 2018. And last year, the country announced that it would invest $1 trillion in artificial intelligence research by 2020. Or consider the United States, where I've been privileged to work with this current administration's Manufacturing Council and the CEO group that's part of that. Even as much as Washington is focused on reduced government spending, it's increasing spending in vocational training in the digital age. It's putting money into the digital economy with new apprenticeship programs, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars focused in on curricula, on coding and software and science. And it's doing it because of the realization that in this digital age, it's no longer about blue-collar or white-collar jobs. As Ginny Rometty says from IBM, it's about new-collar jobs. We have to train people to deal with the digital age and the scientific advancement that I talked about that has occurred as a result. All of these are concrete steps, country to country to country. I could go on and on and on with what's going on around the world to stimulate research, science, education, the digital age. I believe these are steps that the Australian government can and should emulate. But it's going to have to start with people like you. You're going to have to become advocates and ambassadors like never before. Falling behind is no longer good enough. Standing still is falling behind. After all, as Dan Senner and Saul Singer wrote in their book Startup Nation, which described Israel, a reform happens when you change the policy of the government. A revolution happens when you change the mindset of a country. So as I conclude, I believe that people sitting in this room today can help inspire this change in mindset, that we can all collectively work together to get people excited about these amazing advancements that I've described and defined that could transform the world and every country. This effort, acknowledging the true intimidating scope of the challenges we face, but believing too in our collective ability to come together and work hard and work smart to meet those challenges, speaks to us in a way that few other things do. You see this in the frenzy that surrounds Elon Musk, which Australia is getting a slight taste of as I read about his ambitions to bring the world's largest battery to this country. I recently spent a day in Los Angeles with Elon. We're a large supplier to his Tesla automobile. I saw how excited his people are, his employees, the talent he's attracted as he builds the vision of Tesla and SpaceX, the Boring Company, great name, the Hyperloop. He's created an energy because he sells people not on just that one product, but on a belief, an idea that scientists and engineers can work together to solve intractable problems. he oozes and sells and feels creativity and passion and inspiration. There's no patent on that. It belongs to all of us. We can all do the same, and we can all spread it as far and as wide as we can. Australia's future, and I believe the world's future, actually relies on that. I think it's time that we put forward a new vision for humanity, one which doesn't bemoan it from the challenge and problems of what we see every day. Reverse the headlines. Change it to how we can solve it, starting with science as the part of the solution, not part of the problem. And when you look at the great scientific's achievements and the people of the previous era, the industrial era, they aren't remnants of some long-lost golden age. They are building blocks for this amazing future that you all and we all can help define, just like the universe itself, one that just continues to perpetually expand. So let's get to work. I wish you will have a great week, and I look forward to a conversation here with Misha. Thank you for listening to me.